Health, Safety and Environment Onboarding for Contractors. Welcome to Mondelez Lima plant. As part of the Health and Safety and Environment Management System, it is important that you know our standards, obligations, and prohibitions from the moment you enter our facilities in order to count with your commitment to fully comply with what we fully discuss next. Our commitment. Lima plant is committed to maintain healthy and risk-free operations, providing to our staff, contractors, and visitors facilities with higher protection. This in compliance with the legal framework, Law 29783, Law on Health and Safety at Work, and its regulation, Supreme Decree 005-2012-TR, whose objective is to promote an occupational risk prevention culture in the country. The principles to take into account during the execution of works are prevention, responsibility, cooperation, information and training, comprehensive management, comprehensive healthcare, consultation and participation, and the primacy of reality and protection. In Lima plant, we have occupational health and safety principles which define our standards, guide our behavior, are not negotiable, and apply to all Mondelez plants in the world, and were developed by Mondelez directives. Occupational health and safety policy. Here we reassure our commitment towards the health and safety of all our employees, contractors, and visitors. Therefore, we present our values and principles. Nothing of what we do justifies to become injured. All occupational injuries and diseases can and must be avoided. We will continue to strive in order to achieve zero incidents. We are all responsible for safety. We are all safety leaders, and working with safety is a condition of employment. Environmental policy. Here we reassure our commitment towards the environment by preventing pollution, continuous improvement in our processes, and compliance with the applicable law. Occupational health and safety golden rules. Golden rule number 1. Always identify risks, block existing power, log out, and do not place your hands on any moving equipment. Golden rule number 2. Unsafe works and behaviors do not belong to our business model. We are all obliged to stop any unsafe works or activities, provide feedback to anyone involved, and report them. Golden rule number 3. Never remove or override any safety devices such as guards, sensors, ground lines, blast gate dampers, and others. Rule number 4. Before performing any non-routine or high-risk activities, do an ARP and request a work permit. Golden rule number 5. Never perform any routine activities for which you are not trained or qualified. Health, Safety and Environment Program Overview. Basic concepts. Hazard, situation or intrinsic characteristic of something able to cause damage to people, equipment, process, or the environment. There are different types of hazards, and we have mechanical hazards, such as moving parts, locative hazards, such as a slippery floor or lack of signals, electrical hazards, such as direct or indirect electrical contact, physical hazards, such as noise or vibration, chemical hazards like dust, fumes, or gases, biological hazards like viruses or bacteria, ergonomic hazards such as uncomfortable posture or overexertion, and psychosocial hazards such as the monotony of a task. Risk, probability that a hazard will materialize under certain conditions and cause harm to people, equipment, and the environment. Main risks and hazards in Mondelez Lima plant. HIRA, hazard identification, risk assessment. This is a tool through which we identify the dangers present and we assess the risk during the execution of a specific activity. Among these, we can mention noise, whose risk is exposure of the staff to this hazard. Moving machines, the risk is the contact with any parts that are in motion. Works in heights. The risk is the likelihood of falling to a different level, or slippery floors, where the risk is to fall at the same level.
And here we will show you the elaboration of the E/C matrix divided in 3 points: identification, full risk assessment with controls and additional controls. In this case, we use the example of the vertical baler of the machinist's job, the activity of turning on the equipment, the electrical control panel hazard, and the risk of contact with electricity. The evaluation with the probability, severity, frequency, and number of people gives us the full risk level. Next, we will move on the controls we currently have: a closed panel with differential switch, an on-off switch from the outside of the panel, signals, training of personnel in electrical systems, and cow training in general standards. With all these controls, we can determine that the risk corresponds to risk level 3 because we have engineering controls, training controls, and finally we have the associated personal protection equipment. Remember that when you are at a low risk level, it is not mandatory to place additional controls. However, if it's considered, it can be proposed and carried out. Finally, if the risk level is not acceptable, you must apply point 3 in a mandatory way, recommended, or additional controls.
Main aspects and environmental impact in Mondelez Lima plant. This is a tool where we identify the main aspects and we assess the impact during the execution of a specific activity. Among these aspects, we could mention the generation of waste and the impact to soil contamination. Unsafe conditions, situation that is presented in the workplace and is characterized by the presence of uncontrolled risks that may generate work-related accidents or professional diseases. Unsafe activities is any voluntary activities due to action or omissions that means that we are going to violate a procedures, a standard, regulation, or safe practice. Incident, event related to a work that could have caused any injuries, harm to property or the environment, or that only required first aid care. Accident, event related to a work that caused any injuries, damage to property or the environment. Types of contractors. Remember that to enter our facilities, you must have a valid SCTR or risk insurance and onboarding. Type A, temporary projects and services. Contractors whose activities imply to intervene, maintain, operate cranes or special construction equipment, program, calibrate, or modify any machine, piece of equipment, accessory, building, or any other utility service such as electricity, water, sewage, natural gas, air conditioning, and others. Type B, in-house services. Service companies that perform their activities inside the Mondelez facilities at full time or per shift. For example, cleaning, dining room, security, finished product load and unload and raw material, medical services, waste segregation and collections, support system, and others. Type C, visitors, We consider a visiting contractor to those who only enter for a specific activity that does not imply to intervene any machines, equipment, do any refurbishment in the infrastructure of the plant. The following reasons are included in this category: to deliver materials and accessories in the spare parts warehouse, meeting in the demand list offices with any of our workers, to rent chairs or furniture for any events, to provide invoices, enter to administrative areas, computer programming. General requirements for contractors: general works, work plan, safety and contingency plan, HIRA, general work permit or PGT, uh, environmental impact matrix, PDR assessment, or safety supervisor, COVID-19 protocol, specific works or high-risk tasks, additional documents, a specific procedure about the activity to be performed, medical aptitude certificate for the activity to be developed, certificates for training for the specific activities, obtain approval of the permit for high-risk works applicable for the activities such as hoisting, excavation and demolition, working heights, welding or cut works, or permit to enter in any confined spaces. What is risk prediction? This is a tool developed to create a safe work habit that could be used by everyone and will allow us to identify hazards in order to control them and avoid any accidents. Stop. Review the procedures to perform a task. Think. Carry out a quick forecast of any risk. Act. I perform the task in a safe manner. Let's do an exercise. What could happen to the person who's changing the light bulbs? Stop. He is using a ladder to change the light bulb. Think. Fall risk at different level because he is performing the task without 3 contact points. Act. Request of persons that will supervise at floor level. What is a potential risk analysis or ARP? This is a tool used to identify risk and establish countermeasures to eliminate or reduce these risks in our work activities. In which activities should we apply it? Any activity or work event, particularly in those activities that increase the risk of injuries such as working heights, hot works, or mechanical works. Why do we need work permits? Work permits allows us assess the conditions in which we are going to work, eliminate any potential risks from any accident, have the necessary personal protection equipment for the specific task. Remember that all permits must be renewed every day.
General Work Permit, mostly called PGT. The steps to file out the form correctly are: general data entry. Check the box of the required permits. Write down the name of everyone involved in the task. Go to the medical service for temperature and blood procedure measurement if you will be performing high-risk work. Applies to all high-risk work. Once you have passed to the medical service and everyone has been given the go-ahead, request the signature for the mondeless person who requests the service and the signature of the owner of the area where the work will be performed. At the end of the work, deliver the PGT to the surveillance people with all the corresponding signature. Remember that the extensions of the work are to complete a maximum of 12 hours.
Steps to release the general work permit. If this is a low-risk task, the contractor must request the PGT format to the safety agent. Usually, the supervisor or preventionist will fill out the PGT and do the ARP, then request the conformity signatures to start the works, and the person responsible for the area will give the sign-off to execute the task. The contractor will finish the work and must provide the PGT to the safety agent to file this in the records. If this is a high-risk task, we follow the same steps, but you must include a review by the medical service in order to control vital functions. Then you request the conformity signatures to start the works. The person responsible of the area will give the okay to execute the works, and the contractor at the end of the task must provide the PGT format to the safety agents so they can document it. Suspension of the PGT. When the controls established in ARP are not complied with, when the area owner permission was not requested before performing the activity, when the PGT is signed by a staff that does not have the signature authorized, when it has corrections and the general information is not complete, when it exceeds the maximum allowed time of 12 hours, when there is an emergency such as an earthquake, fire, or work accident. Hazardous work analysis. It has 4 parts. Basic steps. Split the work in simple stages. It is recommended that the ARP starts by setting up the area and transferring the materials and ends with the cleaning of the area. Potential risks. List all risks associated to this task. Do not rule out any risk. Preventive actions that describe the safest way to perform the activity for each risk that was identified. You must be very specific in the description. Use personal protection equipment. Personal protection equipment use. It is the last protection resource that you must use. Previously, you must have analyzed that there was no other control measure to protect the staff. Special works that require high-risk permits. Works in heights. Works over 1.8 meters in height with possibility of falling to a different level. Hot works. Welding, cut, and grinding. Works in confined spaces. Works with only one point that works for entry and exit. Demolition works with heavy machinery. Works of hoisting with cranes. Excavation works. Steps to release and end high-risk permits. Request the permit to the Mondelez safety team. This must include a medical checkup in the PGT. If it complies with the minimum requirements and are safe, such as ladders, scaffoldings, lifeline, welding equipment, full PPE, the permit is provided for only 8 hours. With a maximum extension of 12 hours. The format must include the signature of the person in charge of the work, supervisor, or leader. A copy of this form stays at the work site, and the other one goes to the safety department. At the end of the task, this permit is provided to the safety area. If none of the requirements are complied, the permit is denied. Then you must coordinate with the people in charge to improve the conditions and then issue the permit. General health, safety, and environmental standards. General standards. It is mandatory to report incidents and accidents immediately, to set up the work area and respect the signals. The toolbox has to have a frontal or lateral door. General standards. It is mandatory to wear the following personal protection equipment: safety footwear and hearing protectors throughout the facility, reflective vests in the loading area and warehouses, safety helmet and chin strap in civil works, projects, warehouses, work at heights, among others, gloves to protect hands when handling wooden pallets, equipment, structures, or heavy and or sharp tools, among others.
It's mandatory to wear double mask on the plant. It's mandatory to keep 1.5 meters distance between you and other people. It's mandatory that any container containing chemical must be labeled with the product name as well as the NFPA safety diamond. It's mandatory to wash your hands frequently. Carry out the 12 steps for washing hands. Stopping COVID is in our hands. Symptomatology card. As of Monday, December 20, in line with the new government measures and the mandatory fall vaccination schedule, it will no longer be a requirement for admission to Planta Lima to present the symptomatology form. Remember, it is your duty to inform your leader and your company's medical service in case you present any of these symptoms: cephalia, myalgia, respiratory distress, vomiting, diarrhea, fever greater than 37.5 degrees Celsius, loss of taste or smell, cough, sore throat. Continues to take sanitary measures to prevent COVID infections, use of double masks, hand washing, physical distancing. Mandatory biosecurity measures. Vaccinate with full schedule. Necessary condition to enter Solima plant. The two main reasons for vaccination are to protect ourselves and those around us. Distance of more than 1.5 meters between people. In this way, we ensure that the virus never reaches us. Remember, do not greet and do not approach or talk unless it is strictly necessary, and always wear a mask. Correct hand washing for more than 20 seconds with soap and water, and hand disinfection with alcohol. This ensures that the virus is eliminated in case it does infiltrate by touching a surface. Protective mask. Use a cloth mask over the surgery mask. With them, we prevent infected people from transmitting the virus and healthy people from absorbing it. You must use it all times in all areas within the premises: manufacturing, warehouses, offices, locker rooms, and common areas. Remember to place it and remove it with clean hands. Dispose of it in a specific red garbage cans located at the exit or in the locker rooms. The use of safety glasses and face shields is not necessary.
It is mandatory to use the pedestrian walker to walk around the plant. These are consecutive lines, whether yellow, white, or handrails. Have free access to any safety equipment such as fire extinguishers, cabinets, or emergency buttons. Use handrails. 3 support points. Keep your work area clean and in order. Keep the tank's valves closed, secured with chains or in cages, and place them in ventilated areas. It is mandatory that any staff that operates equipment or machinery are duly trained and qualified with a valid certificate. Any staff that performs a high-risk task is trained and qualified. 8 hours of training for each risk task. It is forbidden to run inside the plant, to block the emergency response equipment, such as fire extinguishers, cabinets, stretchers, first aid kits, emergency buttons. Eliminate chemical waste through the drain, gardens, or sewage system of Mondelez. It is forbidden to use jewelry, such as rings, watches, chains, earrings, etc., to have loose clothes or a loose hair in the manufacturing areas. Forbidden to go under suspended loads or go through areas with a security tape perimeter. Man and tame the floor with any material that may obstruct the transit and may cause any incidents. It is forbidden to put your hand in any equipment that is in motion or energized or that it is stopped. It is forbidden to smoke or eat inside the facilities. It is forbidden to leave any sharp edges in the structures, for example, on plastic bands. It is forbidden to use man-made tools that may cause any injuries. General standards at dressing rooms and restrooms. Keep the restrooms clean and in order, as well as your work areas. To use the showers, always use sandals. While using these services, always comply with the biosafety measures. You could only remove your equipment to change your clothes or take a shower. For this, use the hangers in order to hang your equipment. It is forbidden to use demon-delete restrooms. Use the restrooms assigned for contractors. Rules in the maneuver patio. It is mandatory to walk through the pedestrian lines. Wear reflective vests. Follow the indications of the guides. Respect the maximum speed of 10 kilometers per hour and follow the signals to go to the docks. Drive the forklift with the fork at 15 centimeters from the ground and wear a seatbelt. Zoning transit routes. People must exclusively transit through the blue routes. The exclusive transit of pallets is on the orange routes. Purple areas allows a combined traffic of people and pallets. Respect the stop sign in the pedestrian crossings and look on both sides before crossing. If your area does not have the zoning, you must respect the pedestrian signals that have yellow lines. Hazardous energy isolation procedure applying LOTO. The steps to follow. Communicate and clear the area. Turn off the equipment. Identify any hazardous energy sources. De-energize the equipment. Block the equipment. Release any other hazardous energy sources. Verify that the equipment does not start. Just for electrical works, check the absence of power using a multimeter or any other device. Before you intervene or machine in motion, apply LOTO. Disconnect the equipment from the energy sources and lock it with your own lock. Never assume that a piece of equipment does not have any power. Check it for yourself and apply the 8 steps of LOTO. Chemicals. Hazardous chemical products are those that may cause harm to the people's health or the environment. We all must know about how to handle chemicals, roles and responsibilities, MSDS, labeling, approval, and storage. MSDS or Material Safety Data Sheets. The Safety Data Sheets is a document that informs about the risks, protection measures for people and the environment, and response actions in case of emergency situations for each chemical. Explosive atmospheres. What is a combustible dust? There are several definitions, but they all coincide that it's a very small particulate that when released in the air, it has the capacity of catching fire under certain conditions. The NFPA 652 defines combustible dust as a solid material composed of distinct particles of pieces regardless of size, shape, or chemical compositions, which presents a fire or deflagration hazard when suspended in air or some other oxidizing medium. How do you generate these incidents? Due to ignitions, confinement, dispersion, oxygen, or fuel. An event in a sugar processing plant that had 14 deaths. What can we do to avoid these events? In the case of combustible dust, we must avoid the presence of at least one of these factors: ignition source, fuels, oxidizants or oxygen source, dispersion, confinement, or isolations. Conditions that must be avoided: sweeping or generating air currents, leaving equipment dirty, leaving the dust to accumulate, leave the grounding cables disconnected. Contractors with personnel with disabilities. The contractor's occupational physician must send to Mondelee's occupational physician the job aptitude of the person or persons with disability, indicating the tasks to be carried out and the controls to be established. The medical area communicates with the safety area. Likewise, the name of the person and the activity to be carried out must be specified in the work plan and work permit in order to assess the risks in this specific case. Solo or isolated workers. It is considered that a worker performs his activities alone or isolated if all the following questions are answered with a yes. Is the activity going to be performed without someone else? Is the person outside of eyesight range or the monitoring of the CCTV? Is the person outside of hearing range? Is the working area outside of a high transit road? Is the person going to work without the supervision or monitoring of his activities during his shift? Is the person going to enter an area that requires authorization, like requesting the opening of an entrance gate? Working alone in remote areas increase the risk of having an incident due to the lack of communication and monitoring. Any staff that works alone must go through an annual medical check and control of vital functions before starting his activities. Go to the medical unit. Obtain quick assistance in case of an emergency. If you detect that there is an solo work, you must inform the person responsible in Mondelez. Remember that this type of work is restricted. Emergency plan. What is an emergency? It is a situation that occurs all of a sudden and requires immediate attention. Fires, emergency assistance, chemical spill, earthquakes. What to do in case of an emergency? Immediately raise the alarm. Notify any close staff or activate the emergency button that is closest to you. Control the emergency if you have proper training. Find a safe place or evacuate. What does this alarm mean to me? Someone in Mondelez International is requesting support or assistance. I must continue to work as normal, attentive to any indications. It does not mean that I should run or stop working or exit. CO2 fire extinguishers. It has a diffuser horn. Fire extinguishers for Type C fires. Electrical equipment. Carbon dioxide is a gas that is not combustible and doesn't have a chemical reaction with other substances. Therefore, it can be used to put down various types of fires.
Master points. Your attention, please. An emergency has been reported in this building. While it is being confirmed, please vacate that building and report to the pre-assigned team in your area. At the master point, we should wait in line of 20 people.
Disciplinary actions. Failure to comply with golden rules. Failure to comply with the general work permit criteria and its corresponding approvals. Filling out the general work permit or ARP outside the work area. Failure to comply with the contractor's HSNE regulations. Failure to report work incidents or accidents immediately. Not having a PDR for permanent high-risk works. Carrying out high-risk activities without the corresponding authorization. Deliberately attempt against your physical and moral integrity or that of another person. Attempt to remove objects or products from the plant. Manipulating emergency equipment without authorizations. Falsification or alteration of documents. If it is a serious fault, the person will be immediately dismissed. Environment. Key definition: pollution. Pollution is the presence or incorporation into the environment of toxic substances or elements that are harmful to humans or ecosystems, living beings. Environmental aspect: an element of an organization's activities, products, or services that can interact with the environment. Environmental impact: any change in the environment, whether adverse or beneficial, as a total or partial result of the environmental aspects of an organization. Environmental impacts and aspects, for example, water consumption, depletion or reduction of natural resources, electric power consumption, depletion of natural resources, effluent generation, alteration of water quality, water pollution, solid liquid waste generation, alteration of soil quality, pollution. Atmospheric emissions, air quality alteration, pollution, noise, odor emissions, neighborhood, community, or human disturbance. What is solid waste? Waste, material or product whose owner or possessor discards and is a solid or semi-solid state, which can be valued or requires to be subjected to treatment for final disposal. Garbage, mixing of two or more waste that generates bad odors, pollution, and loss of natural resources. When an individual throws away a plastic bottle, it can decompose and generate environmental contamination, or it can also be recycled through a treatment that allows the material to be reused. Time it takes for garbage to decompose of some products: banana peel, 3 weeks, plastic, 4 weeks, piece of paper, 3 months, cotton rag, 1 year, glass, 3 years, aluminum can, 300 years. Waste classification in the plant. Bins inside the plant. It is important to look at the labels and signs on each one of the bins. The green bin is only for packaging waste. The blue bin just for cones and cardboard. The white bin is for plastic only. And the red bin is for hazardous material. Select your waste according to the correct bin. Thank you.